I always knew my sister Vanessa would find a way to sabotage my wedding, but I didn't expect her to stoop to such a cowardly and shameless level. If you think TV dramas exaggerate sibling jealousy, then welcome to my world, where an Ivy League degree isn't enough to protect you from the backstabbing of your own family. It all started when I introduced the man I love to my family, Brandon, a man who, on the surface, was just a bartender at a small riverside bar in Charleston, and that was also the moment I officially became a disgrace in Vanessa's eyes. My name is Catherine Miller. I'm 31 years old and a high school literature teacher at a small private school in South Carolina. I love my job. Not for the prestige, but for the light in my students' eyes when they grasp a difficult passage, or the heartfelt teenage confessions tucked into their essays. I also love Brandon. A warm, intelligent, and patient man who came into my life when I had almost lost faith in lasting love. The only thing is, he's better at mixing cocktails than wearing a suit, and to Vanessa, that's an unforgivable sin. Vanessa is 4 years older than me, the kind of woman who always shows up in designer dresses, flawlessly polished nails, and a smile that makes you feel like you're being judged down to the last millimeter. After graduating college, she married an investment banker in Atlanta and moved into a mansion with a heated pool and 2 dogs with French names. To her, everything in life has a price, and anything without a luxury label doesn't deserve to exist. When I told my family I was dating a bartender, my mom gave a strained smile, and my dad frowned, but Vanessa outright laughed. "You're kidding, right, Kat?" she said, setting her wineglass down as if I had just insulted the drink itself. "You graduated from Columbia, and you're dating a bartender? Why not go all in and date a plumber while you're at it?" I tried to stay calm. Brandon isn't just a bartender. He's studying business and working to pay his own tuition. He has goals, passion, and most importantly, he treats me like a human being. Something I'm not sure you know how to do anymore. Vanessa tilted her head, lips curled like I had just misquoted Shakespeare. "Oh, how touching. But this relationship isn't going anywhere, Catherine. People don't climb the social ladder with love. You're going downhill and you don't even realize it." I wanted to scream in her face that not everyone lives for the so-called social ladder, that some people choose kindness over stepping on others to get ahead. But I knew, to Vanessa, kindness was always a secondary language. The first time Vanessa met Brandon was at my dad's 62nd birthday party. Brandon wore a simple white shirt and brought a handcrafted bottle of liquor he had made himself. A small gift with a thoughtful message. Vanessa looked him up and down, eyes scanning him like a price check barcode. "Catherine says you're a bartender," she asked, voice sweet as artificial sugar. "Then I guess you're good at pouring drinks, huh?" Brandon just smiled. "Not bad, as long as I don't spill it on someone's silk dress." I nearly burst out laughing, and Vanessa turned red, though she forced a smile like it was a compliment. From that day on, I knew Vanessa would never stop digging. Things got worse when Brandon and I announced our engagement. Vanessa called me immediately, not to congratulate but to warn me. "How are you planning to have a wedding? Behind the bar? Or in the back lot of a taco truck? Stop belittling people just because they don't live like you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You don't get it, Kat. You're setting yourself up for a mediocre life, a man with no career, no connections, nothing but bottles. Have you even thought about your future?" "I have," I answered. "And that future doesn't include your toxicity." I hung up right after, heart pounding in my chest. Brandon held me close as I told him what happened, but I could see the sadness in his eyes. No matter how strong he tried to be, I knew her words had left a mark. Vanessa didn't just disapprove. She started reaching out to relatives, mutual friends, even my former colleagues, telling them all about Catherine, the academic prodigy, about to marry a bartender. She told my aunt I was having a midlife crisis, and my uncle that I was being used. I thought it would stop there, but I was wrong, very wrong. If there's one thing that fills me with both fear and excitement, it's Brandon's biggest secret. The one we've kept hidden for almost 2 years. Every time I saw Vanessa mock him, scoff at his job, his clothes, or even his non-designer shoes. I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. Because if she knew Brandon was the only son of Philip Lancaster, founder of Lancaster & Co., a restaurant empire stretching across the U.S., with assets worth over $850 million, Vanessa would probably collapse in her Valentino dress, sobbing that she spat on the very dream she's chased her entire life. Here is the direct American English translation of your passage with no additions. Brandon and I had agreed from the start to keep his identity a secret until after the wedding. Not to play some kind of gotcha game, but because we both wanted to know who truly stood by us when status and money weren't part of the equation. And by now, it was clear Vanessa had removed herself from that list with her own venomous mouth. Brandon started working at a small bar in Charleston after leaving New York. He didn't use the Lancaster name, just Brandon Hale. No one knew about the powerful family behind him, and he had no intention of telling. Every morning he arrived at the bar at 10 a.m., wiped down the counters, checked inventory, and studied mixology. In the evenings he studied business online, preparing for the day he'd officially take over the family company. I remember one time, we were lying on the wooden floor, backs against the old sofa in our tiny studio apartment, when he told me, "I don't want to walk into a top-floor office without ever having cleaned the kitchen floor. My dad used to say, to lead an empire you have to understand every single brick of it first. And I agree, even if most of my family thinks I'm crazy." I nodded, holding his hand. "I love that about you. And if my sister ever finds out the truth, I swear she'll lose it before the rest of the family even does." Brandon laughed. "Let her keep thinking I'm just a bartender. I like this role, less pressure, more freedom. And it's the best way to see people's true colors when they judge others by income." There was one time Vanessa came to the bar, not to show support, but to verify what I'd told her. She sat down at the counter, ordered a sugar-free martini, and frowned when she saw Brandon behind the bar. "Well, bartender. My sister says you're good at mixing drinks. I'm expecting something not ordinary." Brandon just smiled. He didn't need to say much. He made her a stunning martini, perfectly balanced, with a sliver of orange peel cut as sharp as a blade. Vanessa took a sip, then looked up. For the first time, with nothing to criticize. "Not bad," she said coldly, then pulled a black Visa card from her wallet. Brandon didn't take it. "We only accept cash or member cards here," he said, then turned away. Vanessa froze for a few seconds, lips pressed tight, eyes practically sparking. I stood in the corner, biting my lip not to laugh. If she had known she'd just been rejected by a man who could buy the entire street just to shut it down, she might have exploded. After that, Vanessa called me twice, sent a long 3-paragraph message, mostly warning me to wake up. That Brandon was clearly scamming me. A bartender who knew how to converse politely, pick fine liquor, speak French, and tie a Windsor knot? According to her, there were only 2 options. He was a fraud, or I was a fool. I didn't argue. I let her believe whatever she wanted. The truth is, Brandon grew up in Manhattan high society, went to Le Rosey, the most prestigious boarding school in Switzerland, and then studied hospitality at Cornell. But he got tired of the glitz, the fake meetings, the fancy dinners where no one truly listened. He chose Charleston for a while. To relearn simple living, to immerse himself in real life. My parents once asked me gently, very American in that roundabout polite way, "Do you think Brandon can take care of you long term?" I smiled. "If by take care you mean financially, maybe. You should ask Philip Lancaster if he trusts his successor." They didn't get the joke. That was fine. We planned a small wedding, a historic chapel under the oaks, close friends, a simple but elegant menu. Brandon suggested the reception be held at a restaurant of his choosing. I didn't ask. I trusted him. But Vanessa was another story. "Don't tell me you're having the wedding reception at the bar he works at?" "No, not that. It's another restaurant. I'll only say this once. If your wedding doesn't have Norwegian salmon, Dom Perignon, and a violinist, Don't expect me to come. I gave a cold smile. Then maybe you should start saving gas now. I didn't tell her that the reception would be held at Lancaster Reserve, the flagship restaurant of the company, a place where regular people need to book at least 11 months in advance and only attend by private invitation. Brandon still works as a bartender by day, but at night, when he's sitting with me reviewing interior designs for the new Lancaster branch in Chicago, I remember the look in Vanessa's eyes at the bar. The look of a predator who had just been taken down by prey she thought was weak. And I swear, the day the truth comes out will be the day Vanessa realizes her condescension only made her look smaller than anyone else in this story. If someone asked me what the most unforgettable moment of my wedding day was, I wouldn't say it was the long-sleeved lace gown I had custom-made in Florence. Nor was it the pristine white peony bouquet, or the vintage Bentley that brought me to the chapel. It was Vanessa's voice ringing out through the sanctuary, shrill as fingernails on a chalkboard, shattering the most sacred moment of my life. I remember that moment clearly. The piano music faded, and the late afternoon sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows of St. Magnolia Chapel, casting a painting-like glow over Brandon, the man I love, standing at the end of the aisle, waiting for me. He smiled, his gaze gentle, like an embrace without touch. Everything was perfect. Until... Stop! Vanessa's voice rang out like a siren in a silent forest. The entire chapel froze. Some guests turned their heads. I turned around, and my heart felt like it was about to leap out of my chest. Vanessa had shot up from her seat in a blazing red dress, heels nearly 4 inches tall, pounding against the wooden floor as she marched down the aisle. I can't stay quiet any longer, Catherine. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. You can't marry him. Him, she meant Brandon, my soon-to-be husband. The man standing motionless at the end of the aisle, strangely composed, though his hand gripped the bouquet I was holding a little tighter. My father, sitting in the front row, glared at Vanessa. Vanessa, sit down right now. No, she shouted. I won't sit by and watch my sister ruin her future for some bartender. I was stunned. Guests began whispering. Some gave awkward laughs. Others looked at me with pity, and some avoided eye contact, as if my embarrassment were contagious. Vanessa turned to Brandon, pointing at him like she was delivering a verdict. You're deceiving her. Don't think I don't see you trying to climb the ladder. Marrying an Ivy League graduate, it's obvious. You're using her to level up, and Catherine? You're too naive to realize it. I heard my mother's sharp intake of breath behind me. She started to rise, but my father gently held her back. Brandon remained still, his chin lifted, his eyes showing not fear, but something close to pity. For Vanessa. I stepped forward, facing my sister. Can you stop? This is my wedding. Exactly. And I won't let you ruin your life for a guy who pours drinks for tips. You deserve better. It can make me happier than anyone who's ever loved me. Even that investment banker you married for his bank account. The whole room gasped. Vanessa's eyes burned. You dare compare Michael to that guy? Michael owns 3 properties, has bank shares, and knows senators. Brandon has nothing but hardworking hands and a kind heart, I said. And if you can't respect me enough to sit quietly for one ceremony, then you're welcome to leave. Right now. Vanessa sneered, her voice hissing through clenched teeth. You'll regret this. When you're living in a cheap apartment, splitting bills with a man who has no future. Don't come running to me when it all falls apart. She turned on her heel, the sound of her shoes echoing like one final insult. The chapel doors slammed shut. No one followed. No one defended her. A long silence fell. I stood in the aisle, my heart heavy as stone. Then, the officiant's voice rang out. Warm and calm. Shall we continue? Brandon stepped forward and took my hand. If you still want to, he whispered. I'll be right here waiting, even if the whole world turns away. I looked into his eyes. There wasn't a trace of doubt. I nodded. Let's continue. The wedding went on, no longer perfect, but absolutely real. Like our love, not dressed up, not glittery on the surface, just built on honesty. As we exchanged rings, I glanced back at the empty seat. Vanessa's. A part of me felt sad, but another part felt relief. I knew what was coming would silence her for the rest of her life. Because Vanessa had no idea. She had just caused a scene at a wedding that belonged to America's hidden elite, and she had smeared her own name in front of the very world she desperately wanted to belong to. But that truth is for later. Today, I only needed one thing: to become the wife of the man I trust more than anyone else in the world. There's a moment I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. Not when I said I do, but when Vanessa stood frozen in the middle of the reception hall, mouth agape, her champagne glass slipping from her hand and shattering against the imported Italian marble floor. That sight, I swear, was more satisfying than the honeymoon waiting ahead. After the drama-filled ceremony, Brandon and I left the chapel in a silver Aston Martin vintage car. Part of his family's personal collection, though I'm sure Vanessa still thought it was a rental. The evening sun cast golden-orange streaks across the water. And I remember Brandon holding my hand tightly the entire short ride to the reception venue. "Ready?" he asked, his voice low and laced with humor. I turned to him, smiling with unhidden glee. I've waited my whole life for this moment. We arrived at the Lancaster Reserve, the flagship restaurant of the Lancaster Group, a place that almost never hosts weddings unless you're family. The frosted glass doors opened, revealing gleaming oak interiors, radiant Austrian crystal chandeliers, and a team of staff in white uniforms and gloves standing at attention. Soft violin music floated from a corner of the lobby, and hushed murmurs of disbelief began to spread. What's going on? Did they really book this place? No way. I waited 3 months for a reservation, and couldn't even get in. We walked in, eyes wide all around us. Brandon greeted each guest with a slight bow, not like a groom but like a host. I heard whispers behind us. Something's off. How could a bartender book this place? And then, she arrived. Vanessa walked in, eyes full of smugness, her usual runway-like strut on full display, red dress, Chanel purse, clicking heels. She scanned the room, ready to strike. But her gaze froze when she saw the embossed Lancaster emblem on the wall behind the bar. Then came the panic in her eyes when she saw the server bow respectfully to Brandon and call him Mr. Lancaster. She cut through the crowd, storming toward me with a face twisted in anger and confusion. "I thought you said this would be a simple reception." "For me, simple means only inviting people I care about, and this place," I smiled, "is our family restaurant." "What?" Vanessa squinted, disbelieving. "Are you saying you booked the Lancaster Reserve?" Brandon stepped forward, placing his hand on my back. "No, Vanessa, my family owns it." A hush fell over the room. And then, a warm, commanding voice rose from behind us. "My grandson marrying such a wonderful woman, truly a blessing for the Lancaster family. Philip Lancaster, the man who leads one of the largest culinary empires in America, walked in with an air of authority and a kind smile. He embraced Brandon, then turned to me and offered a gentle handshake. "Welcome, daughter-in-law, our family is honored to have you." Vanessa looked like the air had been sucked out of her lungs. She staggered back a step, her champagne glass slipping from her fingers, shattering into dozens of pieces that rang out like the funeral bells of her delusions. You're Philip Lancaster's grandson?" she stammered, lips dry. Brandon nodded calmly. "Yes, and the same man you once called a gold digger trying to marry up." All eyes in the hall turned to Vanessa. Guests who had heard her insults, who had been forced to take the side of the perfect older sister, now couldn't hide their shock and satisfaction. Philip looked at Vanessa, eyes sharp as ice. "You're Catherine's sister? I heard you had some strong opinions during the ceremony." Vanessa stood stiff as a statue, trying to back away. I didn't know." "Exactly why we didn't tell anyone," I cut in. "Because we wanted to see who actually cared about love, not about asset lists." I turned to Brandon, giving his hand a gentle squeeze. And thanks to you, we got our answer, loud and clear. No one accused Vanessa. No one needed to. The silence and the looks from over 100 people in that room were the verdict. I saw her about to turn and leave, but Brandon stopped her with a sentence that was gentle, yet sharp as a knife. Stay, Vanessa. Enjoy the party. And if you can, try learning to see people with your heart instead of your credit card. She froze for a few seconds, then nodded, reluctantly, but with no other choice. The entire reception was a flawless display. A menu featuring lobster, Kobe beef, beluga caviar, wine from the Lancasters' private vineyard, a small symphony orchestra performing classical pieces live. Every detail was meticulously arranged, and every minute, I saw Vanessa sitting silent like a wax figure, her eyes lost in the dazzling crowd she had always dreamed of joining. When Brandon led me to the dance floor, I looked back at my sister. She sat alone at the end of the long table, the light reflecting off a wineglass she couldn't even bring herself to drink from. That expression. It wasn't pride anymore. It was collapse. I used to think the height of revenge was seeing the person who hurt you exposed under a spotlight. But I was wrong. The true pinnacle is when that person has to sit in a room full of people they once looked down on, and no one bothers to hide their contempt. Vanessa sat motionless, as if her soul had left her body. Her face pale, her dull eyes fixed on the shards of the crystal glass beneath her feet, the broken pieces of the illusion she had built around her life. But if she thought it was all over, that was just the opening act. Brandon's grandfather, Mr. Philip Lancaster, after greeting me with a gentle hug, turned toward Vanessa with a gaze that seemed to scan a stranger who had just disrupted a sacred event. So, you're the one who stood up in the middle of my grandson's wedding and shouted at the bride that a bartender wasn't worthy? Vanessa flinched, her face scrunched. I didn't know he was. I thought. You thought, and that gave you the right to insult others? Philip cut in, his tone calm but every word sharp. Even if my grandson truly were a bartender, it's still an honest profession. Only arrogant ignorance turns someone into a disgrace. The entire hall went dead silent. Some guests sipped their drinks, others turned away, no one willing to look directly at the shame unfolding. Vanessa tried to smile, but her lips trembled like she was about to cry. I was just trying to protect my sister. I was afraid she was being used. And you protected her by humiliating her on her wedding day, ruining the ceremony in front of family and friends? Philip didn't break his gaze. Sadly, what you call protection is just veiled degradation. Vanessa bowed her head. For the first time in my life, I saw my sister speechless. No more excuses, no more biting comebacks, just raw confusion, laid bare for all to see. I was about to say something to diffuse the moment. A part of me, though hurt, still felt a pang seeing my sister humiliated like that. But Brandon stepped forward first, calm as if he'd been waiting for this moment all along. He bent down to her eye level, his voice soft like wind brushing across water. Vanessa, you once asked why we didn't tell you the truth. Now you have your answer. Vanessa looked up, her eyes blurry with tears, but she tried to maintain a shred of dignity. I was wrong. Brandon nodded. Yes, but being wrong isn't unforgivable. The question is whether you want to make it right. He stood up, looking around, and spoke louder, so everyone could hear. Even though what she did was unacceptable, today is a celebration, and I want Catherine to remember this day as something beautiful, not something scarred. So I'm inviting you to stay, as an honored guest, not because you deserve it, but because I believe anyone can change if they truly want to. The room held its breath. I looked at Brandon, and my heart felt like it could burst from emotion. Even in the moment when my sister had hurt me most, he was more gracious than anyone I'd ever known. Vanessa hesitated. She glanced around. The faces that used to be her social allies now looked at her with cold detachment. The people she once smiled at, bragging about her husband and her car, now just wanted to stay far away. Like she was a social storm to avoid. She choked. I want to stay. And I'm sorry. To both of you. Before I could answer, Philip raised an eyebrow, his tone still firm. You will stay, but today you are not the main character. Don't take another moment away from this couple. Vanessa nodded like a student being disciplined. She walked back to her seat and sat down, both hands on her lap, as if she didn't dare breathe too hard. The party continued. Music played again, glasses were refilled, appetizers were served. But from where I sat, I saw it clearly. Vanessa didn't touch a single dish, just sat there, eyes fixed on her glass of water. A few people approached to speak with her, probably out of politeness. She tried to smile, but the forced grin and puffy eyes couldn't hide how completely out of place she was from the joyful atmosphere around her. A few hours later, as I was dancing with Brandon in the center of the floor, I saw Vanessa standing by a wall, watching. No judgment in her eyes, no smugness in her posture, just exhausted emptiness. For the first time in my life, my sister looked small. Brandon leaned down and whispered, "Do you think she'll change?" I looked at my sister, the same person who used to make me feel like a failure just because I didn't live the way she thought I should. Now standing alone, quietly, with no one expecting her to smile, and no one waiting for her to shine. I don't know, I replied. But if there's ever a moment to begin, it's right here. At the place where she once held her head highest, and now has to bow it the lowest. 1 year after the wedding, Brandon and I were living a life I once thought only existed in movies. Peaceful, private, unpretentious, but full and happy. We had moved into a new penthouse overlooking Charleston Bay, where the morning light stretched across the white silk curtains and the sound of the waves whispered like soft declarations of love. I continued teaching, while Brandon became more involved in the Lancaster Group's management. Everything felt programmed for a stable life, until one stormy night, Vanessa showed up at our door, soaked like a stray cat, her face looking like it had been dragged through 4 circles of hell. I still remember the feeling when I opened the door and saw my sister standing there. Dress wrinkled, makeup smeared, mascara streaking like black blood down her cheeks. Her high heels looked like they'd waded through garbage, and her once golden hair was plastered in wet clumps under the rain. In her hands, no designer bag, no phone, not even a coat. They took everything, Kat. Vanessa's voice was hoarse, nearly unrecognizable from the one that once told me I was socially downgrading for loving a bartender. I said nothing, I simply stepped aside to let her in. Brandon, sitting on the sofa reading financial reports, stood up immediately when he saw her. Vanessa looked at him, then collapsed like a sandcastle hit by a wave. I need help, I don't know who else to turn to. I made hot tea in the kitchen, my heart both cold and conflicted. Not because she came, but because I knew. If Vanessa had set aside her pride to come to me, the same person she had once humiliated without mercy, then her world must have truly fallen apart. When I returned, Vanessa was seated, both hands wrapped tightly around the tea mug like it was the last bit of warmth she could hold on to. "Michael's been arrested," she stammered. "The SEC launched an investigation, froze all our accounts, seized the house, they took the cars, the bags, everything. I have nothing left." I swallowed hard. What happened? Insider trading, stock fraud, and money laundering. I didn't know. I really didn't. Brandon sat beside me, his face was calm, but I noticed the guarded look in his eyes. "Vanessa, you don't have to go into detail if you're not ready, but why did you come here?" "I have nowhere else to go," she said, eyes brimming. "Michael's family cut me off, my friends turned their backs. No one believes I wasn't involved. They think I'm guilty too. I have no home, no money, no one." A silence fell like a mourning veil. Then she turned to me, eyes red but flickering with a fragile hope. "Kat, can you help me?" I clenched my hands in my lap, my heart twisting. Part of me wanted to laugh. This was the same person who once said if I ended up living in a rental, I shouldn't come crying to her when my dream fell apart. And now? Who was standing on the edge of collapse? Brandon looked at me, waiting for my decision. But then he spoke first. There's a small apartment above our restaurant in downtown Charleston. Not far, clean, fully equipped. If you need a temporary place, we can arrange that. Vanessa looked up, stunned. Really? After everything I did? I nodded slightly. There's one condition. She went quiet, waiting. You'll work at that restaurant, from the bottom up, just like Brandon did. Vanessa frowned. You mean, as a server? Brandon stepped in, his voice not mocking but firm. Serving, dishwashing, cleaning, learning to cook, whatever task is assigned. No special treatment. No Louboutins, no acrylic nails, just real work. A brief silence. She hesitated. I'll do it. If that's the only way. I looked directly at my sister. This isn't charity, Vanessa. This is a chance to start over. But if you're not serious, this door will close. And next time, no one will open it for you. Vanessa bowed her head. I understand, and thank you both of you. I truly regret everything. Brandon stood up and nodded. Starting tomorrow, morning shift, 6 a.m. Vanessa looked up, her face exhausted but showing something else. Something I hadn't seen in her in over 30 years. Humility. I will never forget the first morning Vanessa started her new job as a server at The Hearth, a small but busy restaurant in downtown Charleston, part of the Lancaster family chain. From the second-floor window where I sat sipping coffee, I saw my sister, the same woman who used to show up to alumni events with a Hermes bag, fumbling in a plain uniform, hair tied back, face pale without makeup, hands trembling as she held a tray of water. The first shift, just as Brandon had instructed. 6 a.m. shift change, the kitchen still ice cold, and the head chef, a Cuban woman named Leticia, known for being notoriously strict, not afraid to throw a pan if someone messed up a recipe. Vanessa, who once snapped her fingers to order food at Atlanta's finest restaurants, now had to learn how to sanitize tables, separate compost waste, and peel potatoes without losing a fingernail. I didn't come close, I only watched. Because this wasn't about satisfaction. This was a test. An opportunity not meant to soothe my bruised pride, but to force her to face her raw self. Without makeup, or business cards to hide behind. Vanessa spilled coffee during her first shift, washed dishes until her hands turned red. Got scolded harshly by the chef for mixing up sauces, and worst of all, she had to clean the public restroom at the end of the day. Something I'm certain she never would have entered before without a cloud of luxury perfume already sprayed in the air. That night, Vanessa stumbled back to the small apartment above the restaurant. No central air, no bougainvillea-covered balcony, no walk-in closet full of designer clothes. Just an old wooden bed, a mini fridge, and a faded landscape painting someone left behind years ago. I brought her some food. Vanessa opened the door, wearing a simple t-shirt, hair messy, dark circles under her eyes. You didn't have to do this, she mumbled. You don't owe me anything. I placed the food on the table. I know, but today, you didn't run, and that's worth something. Vanessa sat down, holding the fork like she was holding out an olive branch from the heavens. Kat. I'm sorry. For everything. You were right. You were always right. I've judged everything with the wrong measure. I looked at her. The woman who once taught me how to sit properly around rich people. Who corrected my posture at dinner. Who mocked me for choosing a low-paying career in teaching. No one is born knowing everything, I replied. But not everyone is willing to learn again from the beginning. Brandon dropped by the next night. He handed Vanessa a packet, an internal training schedule for new restaurant employees. No privileges included. You'll have to learn every position, he said without sugarcoating. Dishwashing, serving, food running, kitchen support. After that, if you don't get fired, you can try the bar. You'd fire me if I don't meet the standard, Vanessa asked, half joking, half afraid. Not me. The shift managers. They don't care who you are, only what you can do. I saw a strange kind of confusion flash in my sister's eyes. Maybe, for the first time in her life, she understood what it meant to fight for your place, not with a name, but with actual ability. In the third week, Vanessa burned her hand trying to carry a plate fresh out of the oven. She screamed in the middle of the kitchen, tears threatening to fall. Chef Letitia just glanced over. You'll live. Next time use oven mitts. No pity. No one rushed to comfort her. And Vanessa? I thought she would throw the tray down and walk out. But instead, she turned back, tightened the gloves, and finished the task. I was behind the bar at that moment, checking inventory. My throat tightened. For the first time in my life, I was genuinely proud of my sister. 2 months later, Vanessa could handle a 10-person party table without dropping a single spoon. She started memorizing the menu without writing anything down, even helped a new staff member improve how they describe dishes to guests. She cleaned tables like she was piecing her life back together. Each napkin, each glass, each humble glance. And what surprised me most? She started leaving tips when eating out elsewhere. Just a few dollars, but I knew it was her way of saying sorry, not with words, but with action. One late afternoon, as the sun painted the restaurant windows red, Brandon walked into the kitchen and asked my sister, "What would you think about trying a shift lead role next week?" Vanessa nearly dropped a water bottle. What? You've made the rounds, learned everything from the ground up. The staff trusts you. Our current manager's being relocated to the Savannah branch. If you're open to it, the position is yours. I walked in right then, seeing my sister frozen, lips pressed tight. Then, slowly, without theatrics or tears, she nodded. I don't know how to thank you enough, but I won't let either of you down. 3 months. That's how long Vanessa had to go through nearly every job she once considered beneath her. I used to think nothing could make my sister bow her head. But now, every time I walked into the Hearth, the once small restaurant in the Lancaster chain that had become a whole new world for Vanessa, I barely recognized the woman who used to think the universe revolved around her. Vanessa no longer stood stiffly at the bar giving orders. She wiped tables, ran food, checked tickets, and helped anyone in need, even the brand new dishwasher on their first day. I still remember the first time I saw my sister truly smile when a customer complimented a meal. Not because someone gave her a designer gift or bragged about their child's scholarship. The way she bowed slightly in gratitude, eyes bright without pretense, I realized, for the first time in years, Vanessa wasn't performing. Letitia, who once made Vanessa cry on her first day, had become a close friend. The two of them shared evening shifts, stayed up late doing inventory and planning the weekly menu. Once, Letitia told me, "Vanessa, she wasn't the kind of person I thought would last here, but she proved me wrong." And I'm glad she did. It wasn't just the staff who grew fond of Vanessa. So did the customers. My sister started remembering each regular's name, who was allergic to mushrooms, who liked their steak medium rare, who only drank peppermint tea from a specific brand. The way she cared for every tiny detail left me both amazed and moved. One Friday night, Brandon and I came in late for dinner after work. The restaurant was nearly full, lively but calm. Vanessa passed by our table, smiled, like always, and returned to the counter with a confident, steady stride. I saw a glow around her. Not the kind from power or money, but from someone standing tall on her own feet. Brandon leaned in and whispered, "Remember when she used to call this a cheap job?" I smiled softly, eyes on Vanessa, showing a new employee how to enter orders on the tablet. Now it's what she's most proud of. Not long after, Vanessa was officially nominated by Letitia to become the restaurant manager. Not because she was related to the owner, but because, as Letitia put it, She's shed more sweat and tears than anyone here, and never once asked for special treatment. The night she got the offer, Vanessa invited me up to the small apartment above the restaurant, where she had lived for the past 3 months. It no longer looked temporary. She had repainted the walls herself, hung family photos, added a few plants, and set up a cozy corner with cookbooks and a thick work journal. "What do you think?" she asked, pouring me a cup of hot ginger tea. "I know it's not the mansion from before. I think it feels like a real home." For the first time, she sat down across from me, her hands clasped together. "I used to think I had it all, that I was successful, but the truth is, I didn't understand real value. I lived off reputation, relied on other people's money, and when I lost everything, I was no one. But now?" She paused, her eyes brimming with tears. "Now I look in the mirror and see a woman, not perfect, but standing on her own, not because of anyone else, not for praise, just because I want to be someone I can be proud of." I didn't say anything. I just stood up and walked over to hug my sister. For the first time in years, that hug carried no barriers, no rivalry, no wounded past. All that was left was family. Simple. Whole. The following week, Vanessa officially took on the role of manager at the hearth. She stood before the entire staff, most of whom had witnessed her awkward mistakes, her tears, her early failures, to thank them and promise to keep striving. No flowers, no champagne, no congratulatory banners. But there was genuine applause. And I knew that for Vanessa, it was a moment more glorious than any celebration she'd ever had. My sister, the woman who once believed a person's worth lay in where they dined, the car they drove, and the digits in their bank account, had now found pride in making sure every guest left the restaurant satisfied. She told me about inventory control, staffing for peak seasons, and how customers reacted when they switched from frozen to fresh strawberries in the dessert. Her eyes lit up. Not because of money, but because she was being recognized for her effort. One day, I asked, "If someone asked you what you do, what would you say?" Vanessa thought for a moment, then smiled. "I'm a server, a restaurant manager, and I'm proud of that." The story of me and Vanessa is proof that people can change when they truly face the truth and take responsibility for themselves. From someone who once looked down on manual labor and lived for status and wealth, my sister learned to bow her head, start over, and find real value in effort and kindness. Life isn't measured by status or possessions, but by how we treat others. And the courage to walk through our mistakes to become a better version of ourselves. What do you think about Vanessa's journey? Does everyone deserve a second chance? Share your thoughts below. And don't forget to follow the channel so you won't miss more powerful and inspiring real-life stories.